I never thought betrayal could arrive so quietly sealed inside a plain manila envelope. It was a chilly afternoon in late December, just days after Christmas, and I was still nursing the sting of being excluded from my own family's holiday gathering. I found out through Instagram, of course, a perfectly filtered photo of my sister Isla posing in front of our parents' fireplace, surrounded by everyone except me. I told myself it didn't matter. I had spent the holidays with people who actually wanted me around. But then came the envelope. It was waiting in my mailbox like a quiet threat, tucked between catalogs and end-of-year bills. The return address read, Sinclair Family Trust. Inside was a stack of papers, loan documents, dealership paperwork, and at the top, an invoice $52,000 for a luxury car. The buyer, Isla. The co-signer, me. Only, I never signed anything. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages, reading and rereading the fine print, the forged signature, the smug thank you note scrawled in Isla's handwriting. It wasn't just the car, it was everything. Years of manipulation, gaslighting, emotional guilt, and subtle theft crystallized in that one final move. They hadn't just excluded me from Christmas. They'd used my name, my life, to give my sister another gift I never agreed to. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't just the forgotten daughter. I was their backup plan, their safety net, their bank account in heels. But not anymore. Because that envelope didn't just contain a bill. It contained my permission to walk away. From the outside, the Sinclair family looked like something out of a magazine spread. My parents, Arthur and Celeste Sinclair, had built a reputation in the Boston legal and philanthropic circles, he a founding partner at a prestigious law firm. She a professional hostess and socialite with impeccable taste and a 1,000-watt smile. Our house in Beacon Hill was the kind of brownstone people paused to take pictures in front of, especially during the holidays when it gleamed with wreaths, golden lights, and hand-tied velvet ribbons on every window. Inside, though, it was a different world. Cold, controlled, calculated. My older sister Isla was the family's jewel-charming, beautiful, effortlessly magnetic, the kind of girl who made people feel lucky just to be noticed by her. By the time she was 5, my parents had her future mapped out: Ivy League, debutante balls, a husband with old money and a political last name. She sparkled, and everyone adored the shine. And then there was me. I was the quiet one, the one who preferred books to ballet, puzzles to pageants. I was born 4 years after Isla, and from the very beginning I was told I was different, not in a celebratory way, more like an apology. I learned quickly how to disappear in a room, how to take up as little space as possible. If Isla was a firework, I was the spark you only noticed when the lights were off. I tried hard to earn their affection the only way I knew how, by excelling. I got straight A's, won debate tournaments, was on the honor roll every year. But where Isla got applause for showing up, I got silence for overachieving. When I brought home a science fair trophy in 7th grade, my father nodded once, distracted by his phone. When Isla posted a blurry selfie from a pool party, my mother printed it and framed it in the hallway. That's not to say Isla didn't have her struggles, she did. But when she failed, it was someone else's fault. The teacher was too harsh. The boyfriend was manipulative. The school didn't understand her brilliance. Every setback she faced was met with excuses and sympathy. When I stumbled, I was met with a raised eyebrow and a lecture about accountability. By the time I was 16, I had internalized the truth love in our family was conditional, and I didn't meet the conditions. Isla got her first car at 17, a pearl-white BMW convertible with a bow on the hood. I got my dad's old Acura and a receipt for the transfer of ownership. It's more practical, my father said. You'll appreciate that. At 18, Isla dropped out of her second college. At 21, I graduated summa cum laude from Georgetown with a degree in political science and a minor in economics. Isla spent her 20s bouncing between beauty brands and yoga certifications while my resume stacked up with scholarships, internships, and eventually a spot at Harvard Law. None of it made a difference. Isla was still the one my mother introduced with pride. "This is my daughter Isla, she's pursuing wellness work." When I was introduced, it was always with a slightly apologetic tone, and this is our younger daughter, Avery. She works. A lot. At first, I told myself they just didn't understand me, that if I kept proving myself, someday they would see me, appreciate me, love me. But love, in the Sinclair household, was less about connection and more about choreography. It had to look a certain way, sound a certain way, appear flawless from the outside. I didn't fit the picture. By the time I was 28, I was an associate at a top-tier firm in downtown Boston, earning a six-figure salary, handling high-profile corporate litigation, and slowly buying into a condo of my own in Back Bay. I had friends, colleagues who respected me, and a growing savings account. But every time I returned to that brownstone for a family dinner, I shrank, because Isla, despite her lack of job stability, her mounting credit card debt, and her parade of problematic boyfriends, was still the star. Still the one my parents arranged the seating around, still the one who could show up late and be greeted with relief. While I was expected to arrive early and help set the table, even the questions they asked me felt off. How's work was always followed by a blank stare before someone pivoted the conversation to Isla's latest juice cleanse or romantic fiasco. If I spoke about a difficult case, I was too intense. If I didn't speak, I was moody. There was no winning. My accomplishments weren't acknowledged, they were resented, as if my success was a subtle critique of Isla's failures. Still, I showed up. For birthdays, for Mother's Day, for holidays, even when I had to shift client meetings or cancel dinner with people who actually wanted my company. Because despite everything, despite the favoritism, the exclusion, the manipulation, I wanted to believe I could earn their approval. I wanted to believe I mattered to them. The irony is, they often needed me more than I needed them. Quiet requests began to pile up over the years. Isla needed help covering rent just this once when her lease renewal came too soon. My father needed a short-term loan to cover a private investment that had gone sideways. My mother asked me to sponsor her charity gala since you're doing so well. Each ask came with a smile and a reminder of how proud they were of me. I told myself it was fine. I had the money. I wanted to help. That's what family does, right? But the truth was more complicated. Because I never felt like their daughter. I felt like their contingency plan, the backup generator they plugged in when Isla burned through another lifeline. And no matter how much I gave money, time, patience, it was never enough to earn a seat at the emotional table. Still, I didn't walk away. Not then. Because even being invisible felt better than being entirely alone. Until Christmas. Until the Instagram post. Until the envelope. By the time I turned 30, my life looked polished, at least on paper. I had worked my way up to senior associate at one of Boston's most respected law firms. My name appeared on briefs that made it to federal court, and I had just been tapped to lead negotiations for a billion-dollar merger deal. My apartment overlooked the Charles River, and my weekends when I wasn't working were spent reading, boxing, and making quiet, nourishing dinners for one. I had built everything from the ground up. No shortcuts, no help. Just an endless reserve of focus, grit, and the sharp memory of never being enough. I didn't expect applause. I didn't need a parade. But a sliver of recognition from the people who claimed to love me would have meant something. Instead, my parents treated my success like an inconvenience. "Don't work yourself to death," my father would say at family dinners, while swirling a glass of Pinot and looking everywhere but at me. "You'll scare men off if you're too intimidating. my mother warned after reading a profile about me in Boston Business Monthly. Meanwhile, Isla flitted in and out of phases. For a while, she was into healing, which translated into a short-lived aromatherapy business she ran from our parents' pool house. Then she tried content creation, live streaming beauty tutorials and occasionally getting sponsored for teeth whitening products. She moved through life like a butterfly in a greenhouse, beautiful, fragile, and protected from the consequences of her own choices. Her mistakes were reframed as quirks. Her debts were softened with interest-free loans. Her inability to hold down a job, she's still finding her passion, my mother would say, sipping her tea as though it were an answer. What they never said out loud but always implied was that I didn't need anything from them, and because I didn't matter. When I was 25, Isla racked up nearly $18,000 in credit card debt. She cried, my parents panicked, and somehow I ended up being the solution. My father called late at night, tone stern and rehearsed. She's drowning. Avery, you're the only one who can throw her a rope. I paid the debt. Quietly. Anonymously. The condition was simple. She'd cut up the cards and start over with a budget. 3 months later, I saw a selfie of her in Positano, captioned, Manifesting Abundance. When I brought it up, my mother said, Don't be petty, darling. She just needed a reset. A reset, I was the reset. Always. And so the pattern continued. Isla needed help with a deposit. Could I float $5,000 until her next freelance payment came through? Dad needed a temporary bridge loan to cover a stalled investment. Mom's charity event was falling short of its fundraising goals. Would I mind underwriting the wine sponsorship? The way they framed it made me feel ungrateful for even hesitating, as if questioning their requests meant I didn't love them enough, as if support should come without conditions, even as theirs always did. For years, I told myself these were isolated incidents, that family helped family, that one day they'd see me not just as the one who fixed problems but as someone worth celebrating. I kept showing up, kept giving, but giving turned into bleeding, and they never noticed the cuts. And yet because trauma is persistent, I kept trying. That's how the Manhattan weekend came about. It was October, just 2 months before Christmas. I had just closed a grueling arbitration case and thought maybe, just maybe, I could broker something softer in my personal life. So I sent a group message to my parents and Isla. I'd love to treat everyone to a weekend in the city. My treat. Broadway, nice hotel, good food. Just us. The replies came quickly. My mom, that sounds delightful. Darling, what a thoughtful idea. My dad, we'll see if our schedules allow. Sounds promising. Isla didn't respond until 2 days later. Only if it's Hamilton. I don't do anything before noon. And I'm not sharing a suite. I booked 2 adjoining rooms at the Mercer, bought 4 tickets to Hamilton, made reservations at a rooftop bistro, and even arranged for Isla to have spa credit at a place she'd once mentioned offhand. The weekend went okay. At dinner, my mother spent a full 10 minutes critiquing my apartment's location. You could have chosen something more elevated. No, Isla scrolled through her phone, showing our waiter pictures of her latest brand collab with a hair vitamin company. My dad nodded through most of it, checked his emails between courses, and congratulated me on holding it all together as if my life were some precarious science experiment. Not once did anyone say thank you. But I wasn't surprised. I had stopped expecting gratitude a long time ago. Still, part of me hoped the trip had planted a seed of shift, even a subtle one. A nudge toward mutuality. I didn't want flowers or fanfare. I just wanted to be seen. Instead, Isla's demands grew bolder. She began texting me at work, claiming emergencies like needing rent covered that day or asking for cash for an urgent branding photo shoot. When I didn't reply instantly, she followed up with passive-aggressive digs. Wow, you're so busy. I guess money means more to you than family. Meanwhile, my parents weaponized my stability against me. We're just worried you're not enjoying your life. Avery. My mother sighed one night on the phone. Isla lives so freely, don't you ever envy that I stared at the ceiling of my apartment, white-hot fury pulsing behind my teeth. I envy a lot of things, I said flatly, but not irresponsibility. The line went quiet for a beat too long. Well, she finally said, we all have different paths. By December, I had nearly convinced myself that maybe it was all in my head. That I was being too sensitive, too unforgiving, too whatever they'd conditioned me to believe. So I did what I always did. I bought gifts, thoughtful ones, custom gifts, handpicked to reflect their tastes. I spent hours selecting the right wine for my father, a cashmere wrap for my mother, and a curated skincare set Isla had once mentioned. I wrapped each item carefully. I imagined handing them over on Christmas morning. I imagined, just once, a moment where I felt like I belonged. I had no idea I'd never get the chance. It was an ordinary Wednesday, December 21st. I had just stepped out of a client strategy session, still buzzing with adrenaline. When I did what I always told myself I wouldn't do, I opened Instagram during work hours. The first photo in my feed stopped me cold. It was my sister Isla, standing in front of our parents' fireplace, wearing a red silk dress and holding a champagne flute like she was being photographed for a holiday editorial. Behind her, I could see the rest of the family, Mom and Dad, Uncle Travis and Aunt Paige, our cousins, even our rarely seen great-aunt Lillian posing under the oversized wreath that adorned the mantel every December. The caption read, "Early Christmas at the Sinclairs. Feeling so blessed to be with everyone I love, everyone except me." I stared at the image, blinking hard. Maybe it was from last year. I checked the timestamp. It had been posted less than an hour ago. I scrolled. More photos appeared, my dad carving roast beef at the dining table, my mother in her signature emerald dress arranging place cards, Isla laughing beside a twinkling tree covered in heirloom ornaments I used to hang as a child. They had thrown a Christmas gathering. Without me. My heart thudded against my ribs. Surely there was some explanation. A last-minute change, a misunderstanding. I scoured my phone for missed texts, voicemails, invitations, nothing. With trembling fingers, I called my mother. She picked up on the fourth ring, her voice high and breathy with performative warmth. "Avery, sweetheart. What a lovely surprise I didn't bother with pleasantries. Why wasn't I invited to the Christmas party last weekend?" A pause. Just long enough to confirm what I already suspected. "Oh, that," she said airily. "It was just a casual thing. Darling, very last minute. We figured you'd be busy. Isla said you told her you had plans. I didn't tell her that," I replied, my voice tight. "Not even close." "Well, no need to make this into a thing." She sighed. "You know how Isla gets when she feels overshadowed. We just wanted to avoid tension. We thought it might be easier this way. Easier." There it was. The polite cruelty disguised as practicality. "You understand, don't you?" She added. "You've always been our strong one. The strong one. Code for the one who doesn't need consideration. The one whose absence doesn't change the energy in the room. The one who gets left out and is expected to smile anyway." Before I could respond, she continued, "Of course. We'll see you on Christmas Day for the real celebration." The real celebration, thrown in as an afterthought. A consolation prize, a leftover seat at the table. That night, Isla texted me. "Sorry you missed the party, so fun. Mom said you were busy anyway. BTW, can you help me pick out her gift? I'm thinking jewelry, but need your dollar input, lol. No apology, no explanation. Just entitlement, wrapped in emojis and manipulation." I didn't respond. Instead, I sat on my couch staring at the blinking lights of the small Christmas tree I had decorated alone in my apartment. I thought about all the other times they'd made me feel peripheral, the family vacation to Italy I found out about from Isla's Instagram story, the birthday dinner they rescheduled without telling me, the graduation ceremony where everyone arrived late because Isla had forgotten her shoes. It was always me who adjusted, me who forgave, me who bent myself into smaller and smaller shapes so they'd have room to shine. That night, something shifted, a quiet internal realignment. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something colder, more precise, clarity. The next morning, I made a decision. I texted my mother, I won't be attending Christmas Day. I've made other plans. Her reply came almost immediately. What could be more important than family? Avery family. The word felt like a knife, dull from overuse and still capable of cutting. I didn't answer. Instead, I called Savannah. Savannah was the kind of friend who never kept score. We'd met in law school and stayed close despite different paths. She was married with 2 kids and lived in Cambridge. Every year, she and her husband invited me to join their family for the holidays. Every year. I politely declined. This year, I said yes. I was hoping you'd finally take us up on that, she said with a smile in her voice. Mom already sets a place for you anyway. Your family, Avery. And that's when I cried. Not the quiet, single-tear cry of movie heroines, but the ugly, hiccuping kind that comes when a dam breaks, because for the first time in what felt like forever, someone wasn't tolerating me. They wanted me there. No conditions, no silent expectations, just love. Over the next few days, I threw myself into creating new traditions. I helped Savannah's kids decorate sugar cookies. I wrapped presents with music playing in the background. I joined her family's matching pajama photo like I belonged, because I did. Meanwhile, my phone kept buzzing. My father called twice, leaving a stiff voicemail about how I was hurting my mother. Isla sent a string of texts. Are you seriously ghosting the family? This is selfish of... Then, whatever. Just send me money for Mom's gift. Extended relatives I hadn't heard from in months chimed in with guilt-tripping nonsense. Apparently, choosing to celebrate Christmas with people who respected me was now a moral failing. The only call I answered was from my Aunt Meredith, my dad's younger sister, and the family's quiet black sheep. I heard you're not going to the Sinclair dinner, she said. Smart girl. Smart, I repeated. She chuckled. They planned that party months ago. I saw the invitations back in September, so it wasn't a last-minute thing. They had excluded me deliberately, lied to me, used Isla as a convenient scapegoat. But Aunt Meredith wasn't done. Did you also hear Isla totaled her old car last month, drove it into a ditch after some wine-tasting thing in the Berkshires? Your parents have been scrambling to figure out how to buy her a new one without dipping into the Martha's Vineyard remodel fund. I froze. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with terrifying precision. The party, the exclusion, the sudden financial crisis, the car. Something was coming. And I could feel it gathering momentum like a storm offshore. Christmas morning broke cold and quiet, the kind of day where the sky feels heavy with snow that won't quite fall. I woke up in Savannah's guest room, wrapped in flannel sheets and the scent of cinnamon rolls drifting through the house. Her daughter, Lily, had already peeked in twice, first to ask if I wanted cocoa, then to hand me a glittery, misspelled card with a crooked Christmas tree on the front. I nearly cried again, but I held it together. Downstairs, Savannah's husband Ethan greeted me with a hug and a warm Merry Christmas. Avery. He handed me a mug of coffee exactly how I liked it, 2 sugars, splash of almond milk. No one had ever remembered that before. No one in my own family had ever even asked. The living room was loud, chaotic, and imperfect in the best way. Torn wrapping paper, laughter, a toddler tantrum over a puzzle piece, the dog barking at the snow outside, but it all felt real. There were no dress codes or orchestrated photo ops, just people who genuinely wanted to be around each other. Savannah's mom, whom I called Miss Diane out of habit, handed me a small gift bag. "It's just something little," she said. "You're part of the family, honey." Inside was a leather notebook with my initials embossed on the front. I ran my fingers over the letters like they were holy. I hadn't gotten a personalized gift in years. I always gave them. I just never received them. After breakfast, I stepped outside for air, watching Savannah's kids build a crooked snowman in the front yard. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the screen lighting up with another text from my father. "Your mother is very hurt. You're missing family time for strangers. You've always been dramatic. Avery." I didn't answer. Then came Isla's latest masterpiece. "Since you're not here, can you at least Venmo me your share for Mom's gift? I'm thinking diamonds this year." I stared at the screen, dumbfounded by the sheer audacity. "No, we missed you. No, why weren't you there?" Just the expectation that my wallet would still be part of their holiday. I silenced my phone and went back inside, where Savannah was passing around mimosas and Ethan was teasing her about burning the cinnamon rolls. Nobody asked me about my career. Nobody compared me to a golden sibling. Nobody made me feel like a placeholder. That night, I helped wash dishes and tucked Lily into bed when she asked. She held my hand and whispered, "This was the best Christmas ever." I believed her. After she fell asleep, Savannah and I curled up on the couch, sipping wine under a plaid throw blanket. The TV played an old Christmas movie in the background, but neither of us paid it much attention. "You okay?" she asked gently, eyes scanning my face. "I think so," I said. "Today was peaceful." I don't think I've ever used that word for Christmas before. She smiled. "You deserve peace." The word lodged in my chest like a foreign object, something I wasn't used to holding. The next few days passed like a dream I didn't want to wake up from. I helped take down decorations, played board games with the kids, and taught Ethan how to make my grandmother's pot roast recipe, one of the few good memories I had from childhood. Savannah made sure I knew I was welcome to stay for New Year's. "No pressure," she said. "But the guest room is yours." I seriously considered it. But eventually I had to go back to my life. On December 28th, I returned to my apartment in Back Bay. The silence felt unfamiliar, too neat, too sterile after all that warmth. I unpacked slowly, folding sweaters with care, stacking gifts in neat little piles, and then I checked my mail. That's when I found the envelope. Thick, cream-colored, with my mother's looping handwriting. I thought, for a moment, it might be a late Christmas card. Maybe a note. Maybe stupidly I hoped it would be an apology. Inside was a stack of papers. At the top, an invoice from a luxury dealership. $52,000. The buyer, Isla Sinclair. The cosigner, Avery Sinclair. I stared at the signature. It was mine. Or at least, a close imitation of it. I flipped through the documents, loan agreements, payment schedules, extended warranties, even an insurance binder. At the bottom of the stack was a handwritten note in Isla's bubbly cursive. "Thanks so much for co-signing, you're the best. Can't wait to show this off. First payments due Feb 1st. Love you, sis XOXO." I sat down hard on the armrest of my couch. No phone call, no conversation, no consent. They hadn't just excluded me from Christmas, they had stolen from me. I called my parents immediately. My father answered. "Did you get the paperwork we sent?" he asked, like he'd mailed me an invitation to brunch. "What is this?" I snapped. "I never signed for that car. That's not my signature." "Now, Avery," he began, already using his condescending tone. "Don't be dramatic, your mother signed for you. We knew you'd help your sister." My jaw locked. "That's illegal," I said. "That's fraud. Don't talk like a lawyer," he replied. "You're making this more complicated than it needs to be. Isla needed a vehicle. She has an interview next week. A good impression matters. She was drunk driving when she crashed the last one, I said flatly. That's beside the point. No, I said, voice rising. It's exactly the point. We've done so much for you, Avery, he said, like I owed them this as a thank you. My hands were trembling with anger. I hung up. Texts followed. Of course. Isla, Dad said you're being difficult. You don't even drive a Mercedes. Why do you care? This is what family does. Then if you don't help me, I'll be stranded, and you'll be responsible. I didn't respond. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the dark, because there, beneath the shock and fury, was a single thought I couldn't escape. This wasn't the first time they'd taken something from me. It was just the first time I was ready to fight back. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that signature. My signature. The one I never gave. The one they forged to saddle me with a $52,000 loan for a luxury car I didn't buy, didn't drive, and never approved. By morning, my fury had cooled, not disappeared, but refined. It was no longer a raging fire, it was an edge. Sharp, controlled, ready. The first thing I did was call my bank. I needed to make sure nothing else had been tampered with. As the representative pulled up my accounts, she paused, then said something that made my blood freeze. There was an attempted login to your savings account yesterday afternoon from a new device. My voice cracked. Was it successful? No, she said. It was flagged for suspicious activity and automatically locked. You'll need to verify your identity to unfreeze it. Do you have the device information? I asked. Yes. It was an older laptop model previously associated with your account. A MacBook Pro registered under your name. My stomach twisted. I knew exactly which laptop that was. The one I gave my parents last year when I upgraded. They hadn't just forged my signature. They had tried to access my private savings where I kept my emergency fund, my down payment for a future condo, and the money I'd been saving for my bar association fees. This wasn't helping family. This was theft. And it wasn't accidental. I called Isla next, not to argue, but to see if there was even an ounce of remorse. She picked up on the third ring, her voice chirpy and falsely sweet. Sis, did you get the papers? Isn't the car amazing? You forged my signature? I said coldly. She paused for a split second, then laughed. Come on, it's not that serious. It's just paperwork. It's felony fraud. Oh my God, don't be so dramatic. She groaned. Mom said you'd overreact. This is what families do. Avery, you make 6 figures and live alone like some frozen lawyer robot. You can't just let me have one nice thing. I didn't agree to this. I said, I didn't consent. But you always help me, she said, voice tightening. You paid off my credit cards. You covered the emergency vet bill for my dog. You bought me a freaking laptop. Remember, what's the difference now? You're not entitled to my life. I snapped. She hung up. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a stream of texts from my mother. Avery, your father and I are very disappointed in your reaction. Jessica is heartbroken you would abandon her in her time of need. This car is important to her career development. She's planning to post about it on Instagram this weekend. Don't ruin this for her. I stared at that last line. Don't ruin this for her. As if I hadn't already been ruined by them over and over again. As if I hadn't sacrificed pieces of myself year after year to keep the peace, to be the strong one, to maintain the illusion of family unity. And now I was the villain for refusing to play along. I opened a new browser window and started researching fraud lawyers in Boston. It didn't take long to find one with stellar reviews and experience in family-related financial cases. Her name was Hadley Reyes, and her receptionist squeezed me in for a consult the next day. By the time I walked into Hadley's office, a converted brownstone with tall windows and warm walnut floors, I was ready. I handed over the envelope, the forged documents, and the printouts of the messages from my family. Hadley flipped through them methodically, her eyes narrowing as she reached the signature page. This is textbook, she said. They impersonated you to sign a legally binding loan, then attempted to access your protected assets. I nodded. They used my old laptop. The bank flagged it. She sighed. It happens more than you think, especially in high-pressure families where boundaries are non-existent. Do you want to pursue legal action? I'm not sure. I admitted, but I need to stop them. You have options, she said. We can report the fraud to the dealership and the bank. You're under no obligation to carry this loan. If it's proven fraudulent, they'll remove it and repossess the car. And my family, I asked, barely above a whisper. That's the part I can't predict. Sometimes they back off quietly. Sometimes they go nuclear. I thought about the guilt-tripping texts, the social media posts, the lies Isla had already begun spinning online, painting me as cold, controlling, and unsupportive. I don't care what they say anymore. I said, I just want it to stop. Hadley gave a small nod. We'll file the report tomorrow, that night. I returned home to find a voicemail from my father. You've made your position clear, but if you pursue this, you can consider yourself cut off from this family. No holidays, no inheritance, no association with the Sinclair name. It should have hurt. Instead, it felt like oxygen. They had dangled belonging over me for decades, weaponized it, used it to manipulate me into silence and compliance. But the truth had been there all along. I was never part of the family. I was the structure holding it up, a structure they never once thought to protect. The next day, I signed the official fraud affidavit and submitted the documentation to the bank and dealership. I froze all accounts, changed my passwords, and set up multi-factor authentication on everything. I even filed a police report not because I wanted them prosecuted, but because the record needed to exist. Isla, predictably, imploded. The moment she found out I had reported the fraud, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. You evil bitch. I need that car. I already posted about it. This is what I get for trusting you eventually. I blocked her. Then I blocked my mother, then my father, then a string of cousins and family friends who sent me long-winded messages about keeping family matters private and not letting money tear us apart. What they didn't understand was this had never been about money. It was about ownership, about control, about whether I got to live my life on my terms or forever remain the obedient daughter who signed checks in exchange for scraps of affection. And now I was done. 3 days after filing the fraud report, I received a text from my mother. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even an acknowledgement of what they'd done. Avery Elizabeth Sinclair, we need to speak about this car situation like adults. Your father and I are hosting dinner tomorrow. Isla will be there. 7:00 p.m. sharp. Don't embarrass the family further. A summons, not an invitation. Old me would have obeyed without question, would have dressed carefully, brought a bottle of wine, sat quietly and tried to see their side. I would have told myself that silence was strength, that enduring meant love. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I accepted. Not to negotiate, not to reconcile, to draw the line with my voice, my presence, my truth. Their home hadn't changed. The Sinclair brownstone stood as polished and prideful as ever, brick gleaming, brass doorknob shining like a warning. I stood on the front step a moment longer than necessary, collecting my breath, steadying the pulse thrumming in my throat. Inside, it smelled of rosemary roast and expensive candles. My mother opened the door in her signature pearls and frosted lipstick, air-kissing me with just enough coolness to make her displeasure known. You're early, she noted. I'm punctual, I replied, stepping past her. Isla was already seated at the dining table, scrolling through her phone with her legs curled under her, wearing a designer hoodie and the smug expression of someone who thought consequences were beneath her. My father stood at the fireplace, swirling a glass of scotch like it was part of his DNA. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from Isla. I sat, calm, unblinking. My mother emerged from the kitchen with a silver platter. Your favorite beef stroganoff. She said, It was Isla's favorite. I'd hated the texture since childhood. They had never noticed. My father cleared his throat, setting his glass down with a sharp clink. Let's talk like civilized people. Great, I said. Let's begin with the forgery. My mother pursed her lips. Honestly, Avery, must you be so theatrical, I said, slowly. You forged my signature. On a legal loan. You attempted to access my savings account using a laptop I gave you in good faith. You didn't even tell me you were buying Isla a car, you just assumed I'd pay for it. It was a necessity. My father said, Tone firm. She has job interviews coming up. What job? I asked. Isla shrugged. You wouldn't understand. It's a wellness startup. Very exclusive. They love influencers. Then they can love you enough to co-sign your car loan, I snapped. A beat of silence. Family helps each other, my mother said, voice dangerously soft. Always has. We supported you through school. I got scholarships. I cut in. I took out loans. I paid them off myself. You supported me with judgment and the occasional passive-aggressive birthday card. Isla rolled her eyes. God, Avery, you're so bitter. You act like a victim when you've always had more than any of us. I turned to her. You mean more self-control, more boundaries, more consequences for my actions? You're right. I've always had that. She stood so abruptly her chair screeched back. You think you're better than everyone. I think I'm done being used. My father's voice dropped to a low warning. Watch your tone. No, I said, you watch yours. I'm not a child. I'm not your financial plan. I'm not the backup account you raid every time Isla needs a reset. You're being ungrateful, my mother hissed. For what I asked. For being excluded from Christmas? For being expected to foot the bill for a car I didn't buy? For watching you praise Isla for failure while resenting me for success? You're not the only one who works hard, Isla muttered. But I am the only one who pays for it, I said. My father stood, his glass now empty, his eyes narrowed. If you walk away from this, there will be consequences. No holidays, no inheritance, no association with this family. You'll be cut off. There it was, the threat they always carried like a blade just behind their backs. I stood too, but my hands didn't tremble. My voice didn't crack. You can't cut off someone who's already gone. A long silence fell. I placed a small envelope on the table. Inside were printed copies of the fraud report, the email confirmation from the dealership, and a notarized cease and desist letter Hadley had drawn up that morning. Legal action is in progress. I said, the car will be repossessed. My name is already being removed from the loan. If you attempt to access any of my accounts again, I will press charges. My mother looked scandalized. You wouldn't dare. I already have. Isla's face twisted into something between rage and disbelief. You ruined my life. I posted about that car. I told everyone, then tell them the truth. I said, tell them you stole it, that your mother forged legal documents, that your family uses each other like stepping stones. You're a cold, heartless bitch. Isla spat. I smiled. And yet I'm the only one here who knows how to read a loan agreement. She lunged for the documents, but I snatched them back. Copies have already been filed. Don't embarrass yourself further. My father slammed his palm on the table. You're not welcome in this house anymore. Then I won't waste another second in it. I picked up my bag, turned to the door, and paused. I wasn't done. You didn't raise a daughter, I said. You raised a resource. But I'm done being your line of credit. And then I walked out. Into the winter air. Into the streetlight's quiet glow. Into the first moment of freedom I had ever truly tasted. I expected tears. a breakdown. Some part of me unraveling once I got home, but it didn't come. Instead, I sat on my couch, poured a glass of wine, and exhaled. For the first time in my life, I had drawn a boundary so sharp they couldn't walk through it. Not with guilt, not with threats, not even with the promise of shared DNA. And I didn't regret it. What I felt was peace, brief, brittle, but real, until my phone lit up again. It was Isla. One final barrage of rage voice messages, emojis, insults, and demands. I blocked her, then my father, then my mother, then the group chat of extended family members who were already weighing in. I wasn't available for their opinions anymore. I had drawn my line, and nothing on earth was going to make me step back over it again. The car was repossessed less than 48 hours later. I was in the middle of reviewing a contract at work when my phone vibrated with a flurry of messages from an unknown number. I ignored the first few, then checked the latest out of habit. Isla. You absolute bitch. They took it from the mall parking lot. I was mid-shopping. How dare you? You ruined my life. I hope you're happy. And then, the kicker. You'll always be alone. That's why no one actually loves you. I stared at the screen for a moment, then hit block. Again. It was becoming a habit, one that felt more like self-care than loss. My parents were next. My father left a voicemail, his voice tight with fury. What you've done is unforgivable. Your mother is beside herself. Jessica is devastated. There's no coming back from this. He didn't call me daughter. Not once. My mother, in an email dripping with condescension, wrote, "You didn't have to escalate things. We could have handled this as a family." You've humiliated Isla. She'll never recover from this. We've never been so disappointed in you. I didn't reply. I just saved the messages Hadley had told me to keep everything. The pressure campaign escalated quickly. Isla posted a tearful video on social media, complete with melancholic music and a shaky voice as she sat in the passenger seat of the now-vanished car. It's hard when the people closest to you don't want you to succeed. She sniffled. Some people destroy the things you love just because they can't stand to see you happy. The comments exploded with support. You deserve better. Queen. Haters gonna hate. Family can be so toxic. Keep shining. I watched it once. Then closed the app and deactivated my accounts. Let them write their story. I knew the truth, and so did the bank. Hadley called the next morning. They've been contacted, she said. And unsurprisingly, your mother's lawyer reached out with an offer. What kind of offer? A vague one. They're open to reconciliation if you withdraw the fraud report. They claim they'll make things right privately. No police, no repossession, no drama. I laughed. Too late for all three. They're scared, Hadley said plainly. They should be. I don't want them arrested. I admitted, not out of mercy. I just don't want to deal with them again. Ever. Then we negotiate a civil agreement. She said, a formal admission of wrongdoing, full repayment of your legal fees, a cease and desist clause, and a written guarantee of zero future contact. Done. I said. It took 2 weeks to finalize. The moment I signed the settlement documents, I felt something unhook inside my chest, like I'd been carrying a chain for years, not realizing it had a lock. But not all the fallout was bad. A week after the social media storm, I got a message from an unfamiliar email address. It was my cousin Callie, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. She had always been neutral in family politics, orbiting Isla but never fully absorbed. Hey, Avery? The message began. I just wanted to say, I see you. I believe you. And I'm sorry for not saying anything sooner. Isla's been like this for years. And I think you're incredibly brave for standing up to all of them. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I replied with a simple thank you. I didn't want to open old doors, but I appreciated the gesture. Then came another surprise, this time from work. My boss, Lisa, called me into her office one morning. her tone unreadable. I braced myself for some sort of fallout. Perhaps my family had contacted the firm, spread rumors, stirred trouble, but instead, Lisa looked at me and said, "Your name's been coming up in internal leadership reviews. I've been watching the way you've handled the Sinclair situation, calm, professional, contained. That's not easy." I blinked. "You know about it. Your father called here, left a message. Claimed you were unstable and couldn't be trusted with client accounts?" My jaw clenched. "I deleted the message and called security," Lisa added dryly. "You're one of the sharpest minds in this office, and frankly, it's impressive how you've kept your work immaculate while your personal life was on fire." That night, I got a raise and a promotion. Apparently, standing up for yourself wasn't career suicide after all. Still, I wasn't immune to the emotions. There were nights I sat alone in my apartment, watching snow fall through the window, wondering if I had gone too far, if cutting ties had left me rootless, if there was something fundamentally broken in me that kept me from being loved by the people who were supposed to love me first. That's when Savannah stepped in again. She showed up one evening with Chinese takeout, 2 bottles of wine, and a stack of silly Christmas movies. "No one gets through this without a little grief," she said, kicking off her shoes. "But grief isn't the same as regret." She was right. I was grieving a fantasy, the one where my parents would finally see me, where Isla would change, where the Sinclair family would someday, somehow, become functional. But I didn't regret the truth. I didn't regret the boundary, and I certainly didn't regret protecting my future. A few days into February, I received one last text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Isla. I know you blocked me, so I borrowed someone's phone. I hate what you did, but I get it now. Mom and Dad asked me to plan Easter. Then they gave me the budget and told me to just put it on my credit card. When I said I couldn't afford it, Dad told me to borrow from my 401k like Avery does. I remembered what you said, about only buying what you can actually afford. Don't respond. I'll deny this if they ask. Just, I get it." I stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't an apology. Not really, but it was something. Maybe Isla was beginning to see the strings she'd spent her life tangled in. Maybe not. Either way, it wasn't my job to untangle them. That part of my life was over. I had given my final yes. Now, I was learning how to say no and mean it. 6 months later, spring finally arrived in Boston, and with it came a quiet I hadn't known I was craving. It wasn't just the absence of drama or noise. It was the absence of tension, of the constant emotional vigilance I used to carry like armor whenever my phone buzzed with a family name. Since the settlement, there had been no contact, no veiled threats, no guilt-laced texts, no backhanded invitations wrapped in shame. I had legally and emotionally unhooked from the Sinclair family name, and for the first time in my life, I no longer felt like I owed anyone an explanation. My world didn't collapse, it expanded. Without the weight of manipulation, my friendships grew richer. I had time for things I'd long put off, like joining a hiking group, starting a garden on my balcony, learning how to bake bread that didn't taste like drywall. I began dating again. Slowly, cautiously, with clearer eyes and stronger boundaries. I still saw Savannah weekly. We'd cook together, take walks along the Charles, and sometimes just sit in comfortable silence with glasses of wine and no need to perform. Therapy helped too. My therapist, Dr. Klein, had a way of asking the exact question I didn't want to answer until it became the one I needed most. One afternoon, as I recounted Isla's final message, Dr. Klein leaned forward and said, "If she were anyone else, a friend, a coworker, would that message have changed anything for you?" I didn't answer right away. Because I knew what she meant. I didn't need to fix Isla, or forgive her to move on, or hope for a redemption arc that might never come. Because what I needed, what I'd always needed, was the permission to stop bleeding for people who never once offered a bandage. And now, I had it. In June, I received a handwritten invitation from Aunt Meredith. She and her husband were celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary at their lake house in New Hampshire. Just family, she wrote, but then added in bold script at the bottom, no Sinclairs invited, just the ones who chose better. I went, and to my surprise, so did my cousin Callie. We ended up talking late into the night on the dock, feet dangling over the water, stars overhead like witnesses to an honesty we'd never shared as kids. I saw how they treated you, Callie said, and I think I didn't say anything because I was scared it would happen to me if I did. It probably would have, I admitted, but that doesn't mean you were wrong for staying quiet. We all survive how we can. She nodded. Still, I should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry. I didn't cry. But something softened in me. A knot I hadn't realized was still there, uncoiled. Thank you, I said. We made plans to keep in touch. No pressure, no family gossip, just connection on our terms. By August, my apartment, once a sterile space I used only to sleep and work, had become a home. There were shelves filled with books I'd actually read, photos of people who chose me back, and a thriving little herb garden I talked to when I was stressed. On the anniversary of that ill-fated Christmas, I booked a trip to Vermont with Savannah's family. We stayed in a rented cabin, built a fire, and made waffles with whipped cream for breakfast. On Christmas morning, Lily gave me a card that said, "You're my bonus aunt. I love you." I excused myself to the bathroom and cried for 5 solid minutes. Because somewhere along the way, I had stopped longing for the family that never saw me and started building one that did. The last piece fell into place unexpectedly. It was early October when I walked past a high-end furniture store downtown and saw my own name on a clipboard inside. I paused, walked in, asked the clerk if there was an order placed under Avery Sinclair. They hesitated, then pulled up the record. 2 months ago, someone had attempted to open a line of credit in my name for $700 to $800. The application had been denied due to the fraud alert I'd placed earlier that year. The attempt had come from an IP address tied to the Sinclair family Wi-Fi. I smiled, because where that might have once made me feel sick, now it made me feel something else entirely resolved. I forwarded the alert to Hadley. She handled it in 20 minutes flat. Afterward, I sat at a cafe across the street and sipped my coffee slowly, watching the people rush by with shopping bags and laughter and phone calls and lives that looked nothing like mine. And I didn't feel envious. I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel anything but gratitude. Because betrayal had broken something in me, and in doing so, it had revealed something stronger. Not just my boundaries, not just my voice, but my worth. I used to think being cut off from my family would destroy me, that walking away from the people who raised me meant I would drift forever, unanchored. But the truth, I hadn't been anchored by them. I had been chained. Now, I was building something new. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't flashy. It didn't come with nameplates or staged holiday cards, but it was mine. Rooted in respect, watered by real love, shielded by honesty. And that was the most luxurious thing I had ever owned. If you're reading this, if someone you love has made you feel small, transactional, disposable, I want you to know you're allowed to walk away. It's not selfish. It's survival. Sometimes the greatest gift a betrayal can give you is yourself.